Hi everyone, this is Alan McKay. Welcome to episode 50. This episode is actually a talk that I gave on fast tracking your career and making a splash in the industry, which I gave in Paris earlier this year in 2015. Let's get in there.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
All right, so episode 50. This probably should have happened a while ago, but unfortunately there was a small hiatus. But we are back, and I'm really excited about this because it's December, or it's right around the corner from December. And just like last year, I remember I was speaking at Autodesk University in Vegas, which actually is going on right now, and I wanted to make it this year, but unfortunately I'm really busy trying to wrap up a bunch of stuff. I'm also gearing up for the mentorship. This will be the third time we're running it, and I'll be announcing that in the next 2 weeks. There'll be a very short window of chance to register for it, but I'll make sure that you guys get the heads up before I publicly announce it. So it should be really cool. But this is really an opportunity, just like last year, where I wanted to make December really intense and really a chance for everyone to kind of gear up and get ready for ending 2015 with a big bang, and also getting ready for next year, for 2016. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're listening to this podcast now or in the future. Everything that we're going to be doing is always applicable. I'd like to take advantage of the calendar dates to kind of get you guys revved up for next year and really start to focus on your goals and trying to make a really big impact with next year. I really want to make next year your year. So this is going to be really cool. And just like last year, I was putting out episodes rapid fire. I was doing, I think, 5 episodes a week for 2 weeks, which was insane, considering especially how much work goes into putting together one of those episodes. But it was great. It was really cool. Just going to get everyone really kind of amped up and get to see everyone kind of sharing a lot of their goals on the forums, on in the comments on the show notes. And I kind of want to do the same here. I won't be doing the 5 episodes a week like I did last time, but I do want to tailor specifically a lot of the content that we're doing in these episodes to be about your career, about your goals, and really kind of focus hard on doing something with this. So a lot of the episodes coming up are going to be about you as an artist being able to take advantage of your career and also be able to make yourself more hireable. I've got a really good amount of episodes coming up, but I also will be doing a few other things on the side. I mentioned Periscope, which I haven't started yet. That is one thing that I'm just trying to find the right amount of time to start putting content out, because it's a whole other platform and a whole other thing that I'll need to be doing stuff for. But I'm really excited about that. So if you have signed up to Periscope, then when I do start going live, it'll probably pop up on your phone saying Alan's doing a talk on this right now. You can join in, and you just swipe if you're on an iPhone or whatever you're on, and it'll jump in and you'll be able to interact and talk with me live. Through the chat or whatever, but I'll be broadcasting live. So it should be a lot of fun, and I will be starting that soon. So if you have signed up, then whenever I start, you'll be able to jump in live and do that, or replay the episodes. In addition to that, there's a couple of other things I'll be announcing next episode. One thing I want to do by the end of the year is a career intensive. Now, this is something that I've been doing a bit privately with my mentorship group, which is we do live webinars, and I'll talk with them about their questions they have or specific things they have going on in their career and how to best approach it and work on their goals or whatever it's going to be. So whenever we do these are really informative, and whether it is for that specific person or everyone else in the room that we're doing it, everyone can listen in and interact. And I've always just found like the content, the information we put out is really great. So I want to do a public one for everyone, And obviously I won't be able to answer everyone's questions, but I do think that this will be really informative for a lot of people. And, some of the questions that pop up, like off the top of my head, would be, let's say you're freelancing, you invoice them and you never got paid. Like, how do you go about it without kind of tarnishing the relationship or harassing them a little bit? How do you go about getting paid and doing it in the way that, is best approached? But, at the same time, in addition to that, there's other things like, okay, I want to work in the US. How do I go about getting my visa? Or how do I go about approaching a company to sponsor me without scaring them away from the very beginning? Because this is something I have mentioned in the podcast before, but if you were to email someone right away and say, hey, how are you? I want to work for you. By the way, I need a visa, I need relocation costs and everything else. You're going to freak them out. So, how to go about that. But there's just a lot of other stuff too, just in terms of, a lot of selective issues and things that people have, or maybe, they just want to kind of get a bit more of an idea about whether they're doing things right, or more information about specifically the industry, or let's say they want to switch from video games to film, but they're not sure how to kind of transition over, because whenever they send game work to a film studio, they get seen as game people and kind of get dismissed instantly. There's whatever the situations might be, but I find that even if you're just a fly on the wall in the conversations we have, in other words, you're not going to interact, you're just logging in and listening, they're really, really great. And again, it's live, so I think that's going to be really cool. I'm also going to do another reel review. This is something that I wanted to do more regularly this year, and unfortunately, there's only so much I've been able to get through this year, but that's something I'd like to do a bit more regularly soon. But I definitely want to end the year off with another reel review, because the last one, again, was really great. Again, even if you're just a fly on the wall, just getting to see what feedback would give to individuals about their work and everything, that's all really informative. And I want to just ideally bring people in who review reels for a living and get them to actually give feedback and everything. I think it's going to be really cool. Finally, if you're in LA, I'm going to host an industry drinks night around December 15-ish. Cheat for a second and check my calendar. I'd say about December 18, I guess. Around that time, I want to do a bit of a Christmas bash, so anyone who can come along, it'll be really cool. I will be announcing all those things next week. And like I said, this month, I'm going to be putting out a lot of episodes, and they're all going to be around really getting you ready for next year. And I want you right now to really think about it. Like, what are your goals for next year? What are the things that really excite you and really, you'd love to make those changes in your life, whether they're financial goals, or whether they're more career or more personal goals. Like, maybe you want to make a short film, or maybe you want to work on your branding and getting your name out there, whatever they might be. Maybe you want to switch software, or jump into another area. Like, I want to start compositing, or I want to do more motion graphic stuff rather than the more corporate-y stuff that I do, or whatever you're going through at the moment. So I think it's important, because obviously without actually having those goals, then you're not going to get them done. I think I heard a stat yesterday that's something like you're more than 60% likely to actually do your goals if you write them down, which I firmly believe. My whole idea is always, if it's not in the calendar, then it's not actually official. In other words, make sure things are physically there, that you can check them and say, have I done this? So I'm just mentioning that just because when you're thinking about your goals, I really urge you to not just think about them, but go and get a piece of paper or write them on your wall with a crayon. I don't care. But just make sure that you have somewhere that you can reflect on those. And by writing it down, it actually is a physical thing then that you can start to plan around and start to think, okay, well, I've set a goal. How the fuck do I go and make it actually happen? So just think about that. And that's something that I will be gearing up and doing more towards this month for sure. Now, what this episode is about is it's actually a talk I gave in Paris in March, okay? And this talk was a lot of fun. I had to cram a lot in there, and I barely put a dent in my list. I had about 5 or 6 pages of stuff to talk about. I think I got through page 1. So obviously I had a lot to go through, but it was a lot of fun. And I'm sure a lot of this stuff, if you listen to the podcast a lot, You've probably heard some of it before, but this, I think, is a good chance to kind of get a bit of a refresher, and at the same time, it's great to have a condensed version of like all this information. So, like I said, some of it you might be familiar with, but I think there's a lot of fun to do, and hopefully this is something you enjoy. Now, at the same time, I'm going to be giving another talk at the same event in Paris in March next year, and that's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of really amazing speakers coming on board from Pixar, ILM, DreamWorks. I'm not sure who's official in the sense that I can announce them yet, but there's a lot of really great speakers coming on, a lot of my friends. And the cool thing is, last year when we did this, not only, like, let's say with my mentorship, I had a lot of guys and girls flying in from all over Europe to hang out just because, they were close by. So it was really great to meet a lot of the guys and girls that I was mentoring. But on top of that, everyone else who attended, not only was there a lot of great information from all the speakers who were there, but we all got to interact outside of the event. Like every single night of the event, we were going out partying and, having dinners. And I got to build a lot of really great friendships, both with the speakers, guys like Mark Simonetti and, just a lot of other really cool people. In addition to that, though, I got to build a lot of friendships with people who were attending the talks too. So I think overall, it's just a great event and a great networking event because you get a chance to meet a lot of people who might be in the industry or other people who might just be interested in stuff and wanting to get into the industry. So either way, I love that, and I'm hoping that a lot of you will be able to attend next year, and that will be a chance to hang out and hopefully build some more friendships. So I'm looking forward to that. The subject I'm talking about, I won't disclose it just yet, but it will be really, really, really cool. And there's lots of cool stuff coming up. So I will put information in the show notes as to how to buy tickets for that if you're interested. And I'll put a lot of other information in there as well. So if you want to get to the show notes, just go to, it's episode 50, so 50, so alanmckay.com/50. And just as a heads up, next episode, I'm going to be putting together something special. I'm actually going to be putting a lot of work into this episode, which is going to be about automation and programming for artists. So that is such a big subject that a lot of artists kind of always disregard, is like, I'm not a programmer, or I don't know math, I'm not smart enough for this, or I don't need that crap, whatever it's going to be. But there's always a lot of procrastination when it comes to that subject for artists. And the thing is, I think that a lot of us, myself included, never really got into programming too much just because we didn't really either know how it could benefit us, or all the information that's out there, I seem to find, is always tailored towards the more programming-minded people. In other words, if you want to go learn programming, you're going to sit down and they start talking about algebra and equations and all this crap, which me personally, like, I never really went to school. And so for me to kind of make sense of something that is based and referring to formulas that I never ever learned, it means that, I never had a chance to really learn this stuff. And that's one thing that I've been happy to see, is that I've put out training before specifically aimed for artists, and watched as they were able to start programming the same day and be able to do a lot of cool stuff that got them excited, because they're like, hey, I'm an animator and I never thought in a million years I could ever code something, and now I'm actually building my own scripts and automating a lot of what I do, making tools to help me animate better. And whatever you're doing, I want to kind of showcase that and talk about that a lot, just because I think it's something that would benefit a lot of us, is just kind of finding that missing link that makes it all make sense. Okay, so I guess the Rosetta Stone in terms of programming. And so that's an episode I want to do, which I think that even if you think that programming isn't for you, I think it's worthwhile giving it a shot and just kind of listening in, because I will be giving away a lot of free content in terms of videos and other stuff specifically about this, which I hope will benefit you. And for me, both with compositing and 3D, it's definitely helped. And I'd like you to think about it like Photoshop with actions. Like if you were able to record everything you do and make it into a simple button, but then take a massive step further and actually wrap a lot more complexity around what it's doing, so it's very dynamic. That's what we can do with this. And so it's going to be really cool. That's going to be next episode. I have a bunch of really awesome episodes gearing you up for next year. So I'm really excited about all of this. I will stop yapping, But on top of that, like I said, get on the insiders list. I mention this a lot at the moment because I've been working on a lot of new free content and I'm about to start sending that out next week and I don't want you to miss out. So if you go to alanmckay.com/inside, and I'll put a note in the or a link in the show notes for that as well. But that is something that I will be contributing a lot more to in the coming weeks, especially starting next week. Okay, so Alan McKay, ALLANMCKAY.com/inside. Okay, so let's get into this talk, and I hope you enjoy this. I'd love to hear any comments or feedback you have. And like I said, I'll list a link in the show notes if you want to attend next year's. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to have a drink. We can do some shots and I'll enjoy my nasty hangover and jet lag together the next day, I'm sure. But this should be a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. First of all, jet lag's finally kicked in, so I'm running on fumes, very sleepy. And just to get out of the way, I'm the only person in Paris wearing shorts at the moment. So yeah, like I said, I'm a little out of it, so if I fall asleep, just get a stick and prod me to wake me up. But what I'm going to talk about is just going to be about your career, which is a pretty vital thing. I mean, I'll just give a bit of background. Obviously, I hope most of you guys were around yesterday. But just to recap, I mean, I've worked at a lot of studios, both big studios as well as small studios, pretty much all over the world. And it's, for me, been one of those things that from the get-go, from the very beginning of my career, I've always focused on my career. And I think it's a very vital thing. I've worked both as a studio owner, so I've ran a studio of about 30 plus employees. So obviously doing all the hiring, reviewing reels, that sort of thing, as well as building teams for a lot of other companies. So again, I've looked at thousands and thousands of reels. I've gone through that whole process. Even more recently, I mean, I get a lot of people email me their reels, like, what do you think, and critique their work. Even CG Society, we had an event recently, like a live webinar where people would put their reels up, and I would, with a group of guys, review all their work and tell them how they can make it better. And that's something I want to do more of because I found it to be very useful for a lot of people to learn and improve their stuff. When I was at Blur Studio last year for Halo, I looked at about 100 plus reels, and it was interesting to see, what people were doing. I could tell, where people had, done a lot of tutorials, which is great, but maybe not focused as much on the core stuff that really is what it takes to get shots final. And that was really interesting, just kind of going through that process of anticipating, like, is this person right for a project that is going to be such a critical but very stressful project. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been one of those things. I've helped a lot of people with their career over the last couple of years, and for me, it's become a lot more of my focus. I do visual effects, I do all that stuff, but I also want to help others kind of get to their dream jobs, to get to their goals. And I've helped a lot of people kind of break into the industry. I've helped a lot of people who are doing well in their industry get to their dream job at like Weta, ILM, or whatever. And I've also more recently been helping people who are at places like Weta who want to get out and actually want to start working from home or focus on other things. So it's kind of been interesting to kind of look at the dynamic of what works, what doesn't work. The biggest thing for me is that I see a lot of people who go and do courses, go online, YouTube. They do a lot of tutorials, like technical tutorials, so everyone learns to hit all of the buttons and use ZBrush, which is great, but I don't really see too many people really focusing on their career, like how to get a job, negotiate money, brand themselves, get out there and really kind of focus on that. And I think that that's, in a way, a big flaw because, essentially it is their career and it's something that's pretty vital for what you're doing. I always kind of say, like, you could be the best artist in the world, but if no one knows you exist, then that's going to be an issue because, no one's going to be able to hire you. So you want to get yourself known. You want to associate yourself with a certain skill set. So that way, when people think of effects or, maybe concept work with Mark and Raphael, they're going to think of you, they're going to think of those guys rather than the subject. So you might say animation and think of Andrew Schmidt. So you want to associate yourself with a set discipline, and that way, you start to. Ideally, what you want is to actually get studios to come to you, rather than you going out and firing your resume out. You want to eventually, the long-term goal is to be able to open your inbox and be like, okay, what jobs are out here today? So I'm just going to go through some of the fundamental stuff. One thing I'll mention, PowerPoint hates me. I just knew it would happen. Yeah. I am very unsuccessful with PowerPoint, so you'd think I'd do better than this. So I'm going to start with the basics. This is something that I think has been done so much already that, I'm not going to focus too much on your reel, but I will say that your reel is everything. Getting a degree, getting all the other things, that kind of stuff for this industry isn't as vital. Okay, if you're going to be a brain surgeon, I suggest not going on YouTube and Googling like a tutorial on how to do that stuff. But if you're going to go into visual effects, or if you're going to go into any art area, it isn't going to be about the theory. That piece of paper doesn't really count as much as being able to show that you can do it. And because at the end of the day, especially now, I'm sure all of you guys hear about the industry is a bit shaky, things are changing. And, if anything, it means that people are going to hire people, but they want to know that they can do the work because the budget mightn't be as big as it used to be. So it's not like, okay, well, we've got a month to do this project. It's usually, we've got a week, we're freaking out, and we need someone who can come in, get the work done, and minimize the amount of mistakes they're making. So your reel, your show reel, your demo reel, is something that's going to show that you can do the work. It's going to show what you can do. Okay, it's very vital. So if anything, that's the most important thing. But at the same time, there's lots of do's and don'ts. Like I said, I've been doing nothing but looking at people's reels and critiquing them, as well as hiring people. And even with a lot of my personal, my mentorship class that I'm doing at the moment, for me, what I want to do is I want to get people their work to a level that if I were hiring, I would be picking them out, and I want that level. So for me, it's been a very interesting kind of process to see people evolve and kind of find where people need more attention. Okay, I think the key thing is keep your reel short. I rarely make a reel that's over 90 seconds. I know you're going to call me a liar because I played 5 minutes of my reel yesterday, but in general, 90 seconds. My reel is longer because typically I work more as a vendor. I have a lot of directors come to me for work specifically rather than a studio. So because of that, usually a lot of agencies and other places, what they'll do is they want to look at your reel and say, I want that on my movie, or you did this, I want that in my film, my commercial, whatever. So it's more of a sample for them. But if I were to go to a studio, I'd want to keep it compact. I keep it usually around 90 seconds. I've heard people say 5 minutes. I think that's too long. 90 seconds, because you want people to, just have seen enough. I think less is more in this case, because you want people to feel like they've just seen enough, they want to see more, rather than seeing a little bit too much, okay? When I was at Blur, it was really fascinating, just making sure PowerPoint isn't crashed on me. It was really fascinating working at Blur and talking with those guys, because there were some reels that I would look at, and I'm like, that's cool, we should bring this guy in. And I would talk to the supervisor, and he would say, that guy was at the top of my list to hire. And then I saw the text at the very end of his reel, he had a logo come up. And he would look at it and be like, that logo was horrible. I'm like, so what? Everything else looked good. But Kirby, the VFX soup, he would be like, well, it makes me think as a supervisor that if that logo he did was terrible, then maybe that's the one thing that he did on his own because it's personal stuff. Whereas everything else, maybe the supervisor was pushing him the whole time. So what I got from that was, you're the supervisor, but you want to make sure these people don't need supervision, so that way you can kick back and relax. But it was very much a bit of an epiphany for me, because it made me think, people, if someone's going to be that crucial that they love your work, and then they see one little shot, your name comes up as a spinning bit of text, and they're like, okay, bottom of the list, which is what happened, it makes me think, wow, no matter how much of an impression you make, it literally is make or break. You don't want that filler, like that one piece you're like, should I not put it on my reel? I'll put it on. That could be the thing that costs you your job. So you're better off making them feel like, wow, I want to see more. You know, if it's so quick, it's just like bam, 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 and it's only a few shots, that's fine, because it means they'll say, hey, we want to see more of your work. Great, because you want them to drool and be like, that wasn't enough, you know. So it's kind of like watching a movie trailer. It's like, I want to see the movie now. You know, your reel should be pretty much like that. So that being said, and like I said, I'm going to look at this constantly as I fall asleep. But you know, a couple other things is, and these are little gotchas I've learned just from doing this stuff forever and watching the hiring process. But did I do something? Bear with me. Anyway, I'll get back to that. But basically, put your city on your reel. That's one thing that most people I don't see do, and it's so crucial because you could put like if you don't put Paris, you put just your name and then you know that's it, your email. Someone might look at your work and say that's totally cool, but not think to hire you. But that's because they think that you're in the U.S. or you're in London or whatever. And if they realize that, like, holy crap, you're actually in our city, that's a total game changer. Then the next time a project comes up, they're gonna be like, oh, John Dominique, we got to get that guy in. You know, thanks. Was it a screensaver? Oh. Oh, screensaver or don't worry. Oh, good. C'est tout bon. So. Sorry, but no, that's just something to keep in mind. Like, put your city in there, because if they know your location, that changes everything. Because so many times, you know, I want to hire someone, but I'm like, I don't know where in the world they are. And half the time, it's like, oh crap, they're here. Okay, great, we could reach out to them. Plus, we know the time zone, like they'll be awake right now. We need someone today. So it definitely is a big game changer. Very important. And at the same time, like your phone number, like. I would rather leave a reel at the end with your name, your city, and then like every single bit of contact information, because that can't hurt. It's not like, whoa, you gave me your phone number and your email, like, you know. But the big thing is that like if someone needs to hire someone, a lot of the time they're going to say, we need to hire him today or her today, and they might email the person and they're waiting for a response. And I've seen this so many times. While they're waiting, another person they reach out to has a phone number. So they're like, okay, let's call them and see if they're available. They call up, are you available? Yes. Can you come in? Yes. Great. Other person gets online, checks email. Ooh, cool, new job. Calls them up. Oh, position's already been filled. It's like, damn it. So honestly, if you were just to have your phone number in there, that's all you need. You could skip ahead while everyone else is waiting for a callback. You could snap that job. And I think that is just such a simple thing, but when people need people, they're going to be like, okay, we got to get on this. Like it or not, people in production aren't organized. They're not like, 6 months from now, we need something. Usually it's like, can you fly in today? We've got a big project. We need it done right away. So have all your contact information, then they can get on there. And I'll get into that later about social media, because it's good and bad, but like putting your Facebook and everything else out there, it means your employer might jump on and be like, okay, while I'm waiting for a callback, let's see how much of a freak this person is. It's like body shots and doing all this body painting, going to Ibiza and doing crazy stuff. So, you know, you got to be careful with that stuff too. But I will get into that stuff later on. I have more slides, so please, there we go. So cover letter, I'm going to jump into this for a second, because I think that in a lot of ways this is the most important thing outside of your reel being awesome. And that is just the fact that most people I see do not, when they apply for a job, they don't really do the best job of introducing themselves. I actually have a massive collection. I was hoping to bring them in and like shame people by saying, okay, this person's attempt at writing a letter or applying for a job. I get a lot of those, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've built like a very big collection of the do's and don'ts of writing these things, but I will just say that it's very important, because if you're a studio that gets a lot of applicants, usually you've only got a few seconds to kind of decide whether or not you want to read more of something. And if someone's going to write you a life story like, hello, I'd like to apply for a job at ILM, it all began when my dog died 10 years ago, and it made me realize that I want to chase my dreams, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, they mentioned, by the way, I'm into animation, That is something I'm going to be falling asleep like I am right now, trying to, get through it all. And like I said, if you're very important, you're busy, you don't have time for that. And there's so many critical things I see people do. Other times they just say, here's my reel, regards, so-and-so. And I had a friend of mine who worked for Blizzard. He worked for a lot of different studios, a lot of great stuff. He had a problem finding work for about 2 years, could not find any work. I even lined up a few job interviews for him, and it just seemed like every time he applied anywhere, he didn't get it. And I had seen his reel, it looked great. I had seen all of his other stuff, it was awesome. He's a matte painter, a very talented guy. And it made me think, okay, like the one thing he must be screwing up is his cover letter. So I emailed him, I said, hey, what do you say when you apply for a job? And he's like, well, I say, hi, my name's Alex, here's my shit, and best regards, Alex. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what's going wrong. So I spent like 30 seconds and wrote like a big email and, just mad typer and sent it to him and said, send this around. And he was like, holy crap, this is awesome. So he sent that around, and within 2 weeks he had 4 job offers: Sony, Digital Domain, and a couple other places. So from there, never had to look for work again, and that was his template moving forward to get work. Now, I'm going to get into that in a moment. I'm going to actually show the letters that I would send around to people. So I'm actually going to show you an actual letter that I use when I'm applying for work or looking for work. Now, just before I go any further, I'll go through it and we're just going to talk about the stuff for a minute, but I'm not sure if you can read that. Awesome. So I'm going to try not to get dizzy, but I'm going to read this and just kind of mention a lot of key stuff. The biggest thing is your subject, okay? So what I'm doing here, man, the hanger is kicking in too. So what I'm doing here with the subject, okay, is I'm listing who I am, my experience. I'm kind of putting out an ad, okay? You're on your Craigslist. You want something that people are going to be like, ooh, click, And like I said, if people are looking around for, they're looking through a lot of emails that are being sent about job applicants, you want something that says, hey, I might be your person. I'm also summarizing who I am very quickly. And that means that if they're searching through and they're looking for effects, they can say, okay, yada, yada. Okay, lots of experience, this kind of role that I want, perfect. I've also done something where I'm making it searchable, and I'll get into this later on, but if they were to look for my name, it's going to pop up because the subject heading has my name. If they were to look for effects or TD, technical director, I'm essentially sneaking a lot of meta tags into my email, so that way when they go to search for pretty much anything, my name's going to keep popping up every single time. It's kind of like when you go to those websites and down the bottom they have all these extra words that mean nothing just because they want the search engines to pick it up. But essentially you want to make sure your subject really summarizes who you are. Now, at the same time, it's pretty generic. I just wrote this up, but it does, I think, summarize a lot of stuff really quick. So my name's Alan. I'm VFX supervisor. Blah blah blah. I've worked for a bunch of places. Did some training at Ubisoft. Worked at Blur. Consulting at Activision. Now, what I did with the first paragraph, I pretty much summarized what I'm going to then mention. Okay, so no mention of my dying dog or whatever. It's focused on saying everything you're about to read. Let me summarize right here. And for me, when I look at an email, if I see that, I'm going to say, okay, is this person who I want? Great, I'll read on. If you're going to get to your point on the third paragraph, you risk losing that person. Like I said, when they're looking at reels, everything else, if you don't put all your stuff at the beginning and make it really impress them, they might never get to the end. And going back to show reels, that's a really good point, that a lot of people will put their best shot at the very end because they want it to be like the movie trailer where Godzilla jumps up at the camera or something silly, and Godzilla jumps in the Eiffel Tower, But that's the thing, is that they might never get to see your best shot because they get about halfway, they're like, okay, cool, whatever. You want to keep all your best stuff at the beginning to really sell them and keep them interested. There's a guy I know, Neil Strauss, really famous author, and he was saying to a group of us about how every single line he writes in a book is just to get them to read the next line. And that's what you want. You want to make sure it's so tight, you're being respectful of their time in capturing that. So, I am going to flesh this out because I think it's really important, but your first paragraph, make sure it sells them on who you are, what you're about, so that way they're like, okay, great, this guy or girl is exactly who I want. I'm going to keep reading and find out more about them. Now, the best thing is I've put a lot of invisible threads in here, but besides managing VFX teams through deadlines and on-set supervision, primary expertise is simulations and creating natural phenomena, typically fire, destruction, blah, blah, blah. These days, I help out a lot of bidding. Okay, so I haven't actually read this in a long time, but I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Basically, I'm putting a lot of stuff in there, so I'm kind of summarizing a lot of different things all at once. So I'm not specifically saying I'm a character animator, I animate characters, typically cartoon. I'm actually saying, hey, because the type of jobs I'm targeting are these, so I'm actually mentioning them all in one go. I can manage teams, I can help out in bids, because a lot of times when people are trying to get big projects, they don't know how much a tornado moving through a volcano that's being hit by an asteroid is going to cost. So if you're able to say, hey, I've got lots of experience, this is what I do, they're going to say, great, can you tell us how much to charge? So, this is where you can kind of extend your experience a lot further. By mentioning these things, it's mentioning exactly what I want, so that way it's hopefully going to resonate to them on one level or another. And sometimes when you're emailing, you're not emailing the head of 3D or anyone, you might be emailing HR or human resources. You might be emailing someone who is in charge of placing people, but doesn't necessarily do the job. So if you mention I am a Krakatoa and P-flow expert and I use Maya end particles for all my other stuff, they're going to be like, huh, what? So you want to make sure that this stuff is in layman's terms. It's very clear for anyone. And again, that's something I'll get onto later on. It's just about making sure everything that you do is searchable and clear, so that way it's something that if they look at it, they're like, well, all I know is we need a particle effects TD. I don't know what that is, but we're looking for that. So if they see it in there, they're going to say, cool, okay, now this is someone we need to look into. So this sort of stuff here, it essentially is another way just to make sure I'm trying to pique their interest, no matter what, if they're really technical or if they're more just people who are looking to position something. A recruiter might need to find a very specific person, and they need to look for keywords to understand it. So another thing I mentioned, and it's such a simple thing, but I wanted to send you a brief email to introduce myself. I'm not specifically looking for work right now. I wanted to reach out, and I'm going to look down here before I get dizzy, but I wanted to reach out as I'm a big fan of your work at your studio. I recently finished up work on this one, and I'm currently wrapping on this one before I jump onto this other thing. So that, again, it's a bit exaggerated, but this is really interesting. I wanted to send you a brief email. It's the same way if you go up to someone that you don't know and you say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. It's very easy for people to be like, oh man, I don't have time for this. But if you say, I just wanted to quickly ask you a question, whether it's email or talking in person, that's something that kind of triggers in their head, okay, it's going to be very short, sure, I'll give you my time. So it's something to disarm people when they get an email, like, hey, I'm going to keep this brief, but I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, okay? Another thing is, and this is interesting to me, none of this I did on purpose. It wasn't like I sat down after reading a book on psychology and I was like, haha, I'm going to hypnotize you. But after a while, yeah, maybe I should buy me coffee. So one of the things is that anytime I have success, I always look at it, same way with failure, and I'm like, what did I do right? Okay, I used to go to bars and get free drinks all the time, and I'm like, what was I doing right? So after a while, I sat down and I'm like, okay, I think it makes sense. I did this, this, and this. So then you can try and repeat it, and then go to a bar, and it's like, all right, trigger, let's see if this worked, free drink, score, So with this sort of thing, like anytime I've had success, after a while I've looked at, okay, like that actually makes a lot of sense why I get that result. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time on this one subject, and then I'll go into lots of other stuff, but your cover letter is essentially, if you don't do it right, people won't look at your reel. I know that because I don't if the letter doesn't say enough, or they're like, look at my shit, I don't really want to look at their shit. So I think it's quite important. But for me, one thing I started doing, because I wasn't specifically looking for work, I just wanted to reach out because, I like this stuff and one day I'd like to work for them. I stopped saying I would like to apply for a job. And instead, I just wanted to make that introduction, and that way we know of each other and we can continue that conversation later on. And from receiving so many emails, from receiving so many job applications, if someone comes to me with the gimme, gimme, gimme mentality, they say like, hey, you give me a job. I don't know you, but I want a job at your company. And I've had people email me, one person 17 times emailed me over and over and over, basically saying, you need to give me a visa and a job and everything. It was awkward because I ended up working with him recently, and it's just like, oh, that's that guy, But that whole mentality, like, if people contact you and say, I want all this stuff, and you don't have the answer that they want, like, I'm sorry, but we're not looking right now, whatever, it's actually a lot harder for you to respond to them, because it's like, okay, I gotta give them a negative response. So what usually happens is you end up just not replying, because it kind of, you feel like you have to give it some time. Okay, I'll write a rejection letter tonight when I have time, and you end up getting a little bit of guilt from it, and it's easier just not to reply than to reply. Now, if someone emailed you and said, I love your work, here's my stuff, just want to send it out, I'm actually looking for a job, just want to introduce myself because I'm a big fan of your work, they're going to reply back like, that's so awesome, by the way, I looked at your reel, really great stuff, That way they know who you are, you kind of got through to them without ever asking, demanding, I want stuff. So for me, I found it to be very effective, and moving forward with it, I also I overdid it here, but it's a chance to say, previously I worked on this project, I'm currently doing this, and which I'm wrapping on soon, but I'm going to quickly do another project. Anytime I've done that, and again, I didn't do it on purpose, but anytime I've said, I just finished this, I'm doing this, and I'm quickly jumping onto this, people usually respond with, how quickly are you doing that project? Because we need someone right away. So kind of having that one word, quickly, people are like, well, we need someone. Is it a 2-week project? Because we can delay our project for you to come on board. So it's just a quick way of saying, I actually, even though I just said I'm not looking for a job, I actually am going to be available soon if you want me. And you've had a chance to plug all these other projects, which is a good validation. You can say, I just did this, this, and this. And even if, because this is a common thing, even if you haven't got a lot of experience and you can't say, okay, well, I just did Transformers 10 and Die Hard 15 and Die Hard vs. Transformers 10, you can still at least put other stuff in there. It's a chance to market yourself without being braggy. And that's something I'll get into in a moment, but everything I do, I try and be as humble as I can. You don't want to ever come off being really cocky. And the problem is that with email, it's very easy for someone to misread it and be like, yeah, that guy sounds like a dick, I'm going to hire this other person. And I've seen that. There's a guy I know who put his reel up. Actually, now I know why. It makes so much sense. He had 5 million views, so he decided on Vimeo to charge $1 to view his reel. And it's because he wanted to make $5 million. But a lot of people were not willing to check out his work because they're like, why would I give you $1 to look at your reel to see if I want to hire you? So it kind of had a bit of a negative impact, and I thought it was really kind of stupid at the time, but then I'm like, $5 million, that'd be worth it, okay? So, I kind of understand his perspective now, but at the time, it was kind of rippling through the industry, who the hell is this guy to charge $1 to look at his reel? But good on him, entrepreneur, But that being said, this is a chance to market yourself and have a way to brag a little bit, advertise that I just did this and I'm doing that. That way it's not like I'm doing all this cool stuff and you're selling yourself. It's more conversational, and that's what I always try and do, is make it a bit more of a conversation rather than being putting them on a pedestal, please give me a job, I'll work for free or whatever, The other thing is just going to, I work both in, whatever software. This is because typically when you're applying for a job or people looking for work, there may be these negative things that pop up. Okay, they might look at your stuff and be like, ooh, I saw on his thing that they use 3ds Max. Where am I a house? Okay, I can't hire that person. Or they might look at your stuff and realize, hey, that person's shot was on someone else's reel. maybe they didn't do it. There can be times when certain things pop up and it can actually have a lot of negative impact. So anything that you can catch yourself, it's good to address it, because if there's a bit of an unknown, then what's going to happen is they're going to, over time, it will actually sink into their head, yeah, I'm not sure if I trust this person. But if you're able to address it right away, you're able to get rid of it. So that way you eliminate any of that negativity associated with what you're doing. Okay, so one quick example, I went to Scanline, they do all the water stuff, lots of ocean tidal waves, stuff like that. And I went in there and I had a big chat with them. It went really well, and I got offered the job. And however, I didn't know, I had breakfast the next day with a friend of mine. He's a visual effects supervisor, and he mentioned I was in there that afternoon, and they were talking about you, and they were really concerned because you had so many projects and so many companies on your resume. So they started thinking this isn't normal. Maybe this guy got fired from every place, or maybe this person is lying about their stuff. It was more a lot of people there knew me. However, it was more one of those this is a little bit weird, 10,000 pages or something. No, I'm kidding, but it is something that I never thought of. I never in a million years would have thought having a beefy resume is actually a bad thing. However, he mentioned they were really kind of concerned about this. However, I was unfortunate because Chris, my friend, was I've worked with Alan at 6 different places in 3 different countries. Usually what happens, he gets hired at the end when shit's hit the fan and they need to bring someone to fix things. So they're oh, okay, that makes sense. Now, I'm lucky that he was there to do that. Otherwise, I don't know. But I never thought of that. And for me then, it meant that I could always put that in there. If I felt like that was an issue, I could always say, by the way, I know I've got a lot of stuff on my resume. It's because I'm usually the guy who gets called in to put out all the fires. Haha, whatever. But then they're going to be oh, cool, I was wondering about that. Great, keep reading. Okay, so I'll wrap this up, but basically that paragraph there in the middle, bam, is more about addressing certain things. So I'm going to educate people about software I use or other things I think that they might be interested in, but it's a chance to disqualify any negativity associated with what you're doing as well. So it's just a chance to cover any bases you need. Now, by the way, I'm going to give you guys a link later if you want to download all this stuff. I've actually got a very in-depth explanation of all this stuff, so you can kind of deconstruct it further and be okay, now it makes sense because his Aussie accent made none. So just moving forward, it's just most of the typical work that I picked up for these days is to lean towards either simulating water, blah, blah, blah. So again, I'm just doing that to resonate with people who might look at my stuff and be what the hell are you? Are a vampire killer, or are you a fire guy, or what is it? So it's a chance for you to kind of point out what you're seeking, what you do, so that way you're making up their mind for them. Because the hardest thing is, if you go to someone and say, I do 3D, or I do 2D, that means nothing. They can be oh, you're this or that. If you paint a very specific image in your head of who you are, then they're going to say, oh, you're the person who does all the water simulations. Great. Okay, so the next time they need water, they'll be oh, there was that person, there was that girl that was doing all the water stuff, or that guy who did this. Then they can actually start to single you out. And you want to do that. You want them to think, fire, get that one in, or water, or whatever it's going to be, okay? So really important, and I will get into that. So finally, put a link to my CV and reel below, in case you ever need someone, as well as some references and a breakdown reel as well. So in other words, I'll just quickly summarize. Here's my stuff. Here's my shit, okay? But I've put all the other stuff in there as well. So it's a chance to say, okay, here's all my stuff in case you're interested. But the whole setup I've done was basically saying, I'm not looking for a job, but in case you're looking ever, here's my stuff, okay? And then please let me know if you have any questions. Now, the final paragraph is a chance for me to recalibrate the conversation, okay? So if I'm applying for work and I write I just worked here, all this experience, and I know all this software and blah blah blah. It's whoa, what a dick. So this is a chance to say, hey, to make them more humble. Okay. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm a big fan of the work you guys pulled out. So I definitely love the opportunity to work with you guys. I was curious about the recent commercial you guys did, blah blah blah, and that line there, I was curious about the recent project. That's a chance to get personal. Actually, it does 3 things. It's a chance to get personal with them about something they're doing. It's also showing it isn't a cut and paste email, okay? Because you get that sometimes. It's dear sir, blah blah, and it's just such an obvious, pasting, sending it out to 5,000 people. Okay, so this is a chance to make it a little bit more. Hey, I'm specifically talking to you. And another thing, I do this a lot without realizing, but I always seem to end an email with a question, so it ends up kind of forcing the person to reply to me. So then I end up with 1,000 emails because everyone replies. I'm like, damn it. But seriously, email is my enemy. But it is a chance for you to say, like, hey, I was curious about this thing. How did you guys do it? And that way it kind of makes them feel positioned to respond to you. So instead of like, cool, there's your stuff, great, I'll put it in the bin. It's like, oh yeah, the guinea pig commercial with like the flamethrower and the crazy other stuff. Yeah, we actually had to do all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it gets a chance to have a conversation start, and you can go back and forth. And that is so powerful because you're taking yourself out of the job candidate area and into someone's personal space where they're going to know who you are. It's going to really resonate with them, and it gives you a chance to continue to talk, okay? And they'll maybe ask questions about you. So all this stuff is very invisible, but it's just something that I've never done in a manipulative way. It's just more over time. It's going to become quite general for me to say, hey, here's some of the work I just did and I'm doing now. Quickly jumping onto this. By the way, here's my stuff. I really love the work you guys do, blah, blah, blah. So thanks again, Rick or whoever. Make sure the name is actually Rick. But that's something I've decided, I've been doing for a long time, and it's just, I've always found when I meet people and they're like, it was really nice to meet you, Alan. It just kind of makes them be like, oh, like they actually remembered my name, or it makes it feel so much more personal. So I always try to end with their name, okay? And the kindest regards, all that stuff. Again, it's just more to say, like, anything that you said that might be misconstrued as being cocky, it's a chance to bring it back into I'm genuine and down to earth, and that's what you want. So that way, email, it's so easy to have that miscommunication. And then you put your stuff at the bottom. Always put your stuff at the bottom. This is something that's being researched a lot. Everyone always clicks any link that's at the bottom of your email, so do that. Actually, one thing I will mention, my email signature, these days I put a lot in there, and it's a chance to validate yourself a bit more. If they want to know more information about you, they can click all the links below. And just in case you ever did have any negative stuff about you on the internet, just in case that was the situation where you don't want them to Google you because it turned out that you used to, be a mass murderer or whatever it is. But seriously, putting like, here's a link to my reel, here's a link to my IMDb, here's a link to my LinkedIn, they can just go click, click, click and open them all up. It's less likely they'll end up Googling you because you've provided all the information to them. Okay, so you want to kind of force the direction exactly how you want it to go. It sounds like a lot of work, and I will say this a lot. This is your career, and all this stuff, most people think, I don't need to do that stuff. I had a dinner with Autodesk, with the execs at Autodesk recently, and I mentioned, the career stuff, how most artists, they're like, I don't need to worry about negotiating money. The producer can take care of that. I trust them, and everyone laughed because that's exactly what a producer would love to hear. It's like, great, okay, $5 an hour, done, move on to the next person. It's not like anyone's out there to screw you, but you need to have your own best interests at heart. If you don't, no one else is going to really step up and be like, well, my conscience says that I shouldn't screw you, my bank account says, get him, So just keep that in mind, like you need to know this stuff, it's very important. I'll pick up the pace a little bit, but where was I? So yeah, that's all the cover letter stuff. I did have a link, and go back, please. Okay, so I've got a link here. If you go there, I'm going to put together some stuff for you guys, and I try to make it easy. It's almckay.com/Paris. Come on. Hopefully I spelled it right. So what I'll do is I'm going to send you guys some information, some extra stuff, like the cover letter stuff, other information, especially on negotiating, like how to get a pay rise or promotion, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you check out that link. It'll, I'll be able to give you more goodies. Relationships. So let me find where the heck I was up to. But yeah, actually, one thing I'll get onto for a second. Moving forward, your resume. This is something I'll just jump on really briefly. I always think your resume isn't as important. It's something that it's good to keep up to date, but these days you've got LinkedIn. There's a website called Zerply. I won't bother spelling it, but I've got a podcast, and the latest episode out right now is actually interviewing one of the co-founders of Zerply. He's ex-DreamWorks, ILM, Weta, character animator, really great guy, really smart. The podcast episode has a lot of really great advice he gives about career stuff too. And his website Zerply is really great. It's aimed at visual effects people. But all these websites, they do all that stuff for you. IMDb is pretty much for film the new resume. You keep that up to date because it's exactly where people are going to go to check out your stuff. I will say, when I first spoke to ILM about being an effects lead on Transformers 2, I ended up going to Germany instead, but I spoke to them about that. I was going to take the job. I'd just been to California so many times. I decided to do something different. But yeah, I sent them my stuff because they're like, hey, we just want to get your resume, everything else, just so we have it, but when you're available. And I didn't know this again, but I sent them my resume, and they called back laughing, and they're like, dude, your resume is 17 pages long. And this isn't because I worked at a lot of places. It's because the only time I update my resume is for my visa, okay? Because for that, you need to be very in-depth. It needs to cover everything. So my resume was huge, and they told me, if it was anyone but you, we would have just thrown it out, okay? But for you, it's fine, but usually your resume is one page. I'm like, oh, I didn't actually know that, okay. So typically, that's one thing I go back and forth a little bit about, because I think a resume is a chance to tell a story. Just like your cover letter, you get to paint a picture of hey, when I was at the studio, we're a small team, I managed to grow it to this size, or I managed to save the day on this project, okay? So I like the idea of telling a story, but at the same time, I feel like with film and games, maybe it's better to keep it condensed and save that for the interview, or use it as a soundbite later on. The other thing though is at Weta, for instance, one of the key things is that you need to have a lot of references. References go a long way. I was talking about this with some people the other day. References are a chance for people to validate or say this person actually knows what they're doing, because your real resume, everything cool, but maybe you didn't even do any of that stuff, or you just had a field day typing it all up. So references are really important. Weta, for instance, that's all they do. They will look at references. One of the producers, I remember on Lord of the Rings, he was chatting to me about that, about how it's so much cheaper than getting someone a visa, relocating them, getting them to New Zealand, getting them into the environment, and then finding out this guy's a total asshole, and no one liked him or her, and they're just causing problems, didn't know what they're doing. That's a huge issue. So you want to make sure that they're good. People can, their references actually say they're great people, because it's a lot cheaper to make a phone call. Hey, is this person cool? They're like, run, get out, this person's bad. Then you're saving yourself a lot of time and hassle. And even just on the side of, okay, they're able to do their job, that's one thing. But if they're unable to work with others, I think that can be a really bad thing, because, you can bring someone into your environment that's really poisonous, and that's going to cause people to quit, to cry, all that stuff. And I've seen that 100 times. So it doesn't matter how great this person is. If they're, not a nice person, or they're very competitive, it can cause issues. So personality goes a long way too. I will pick it up a little bit, but let me just check how much time. Okay, so I'll pick it up a little bit. I'll try and run through this as fast as I can. But let's just say your first year in. In fact, I'm not going to go nearly as far as I want to go, so I'm just going to rattle off a couple of things for a second. Your first year in, I'm just going to say, whether you're out here listening right now, you're 5 years in, this still applies, but I think that working in commercials right away is way more important than working in feature film. I said this the other day, it's kind of great to be able to talk about my experiences in the US when I first came there, but I found that a lot of people there did specialize. Usually it's their first gig. They'll come in as a texture artist or as an animator, but that's the one thing that they've learned. They've gone, at the bigger studios, if you came right in, you kind of get put into that area right away. And it didn't give you a chance to really learn everything else. I think it's really good to specialize, but I think right away, for the first 2 or 3 years, it's better to be a generalist, because I think it's very important to learn every area of 3D. Okay, and then from there you can kind of grow and evolve. At the same time, working in commercials, James Bennett, the guy from Berkeley that I mentioned, he said something the other day which I thought was really great. He said that working commercials is dog's years. In other words, you get about 5 or 10 years of experience in about the span of 2 years. Okay, very vital because you'll get to be put in a lot more stressful situations. The turnaround is usually like 2 or 3 weeks. You get to jump into a lot of different hats, get to animate, model. I always did effects, I loved effects, but at the same time I wanted to make sure I could model, animate characters, all that stuff, and then later I started to focus and specialize. But it's very important, so that way you understand the process, the pipeline. You know a little bit of compositing, so that way when you talk to a compositor, you can say, hey, you need to make this additive, screen this, here's an additional mask for this, you know, be able to talk their language as well. Okay? The biggest thing though is that this is a chance for you to build your reel fast. Okay? Because when you go into commercials, this is a chance for you to get your old reel that you made and throw it away. Because your first reel, you want to use it to get your first job, but then get rid of it. Because if you have all this cool stuff and then at the very end you've got like one bit of your old animation mentor work or whatever it's going to be, that's enough for people to go, wait a minute, like, you know, this guy, it kind of brings them back to, oh, this guy must be a junior, or this girl, you know, must, you know, work on, you know, a bunch of other stuff in their spare time still because they're quite new, or whatever it's going to be. But it kind of brings the quality down. If you keep it all production work, they're going to say, they're going to focus on, this works great, we want to hire this person, instead of like, oh, okay, do they require a lot more supervision because they're obviously still kind of building their experience up. The biggest thing though is, yeah, you're going to get a lot more stuff for your reel. When I first moved into commercials, I went from having like my other stuff on my reel to having so much stuff I didn't know what to do with it, and it was a chance for me to you know, cut a new reel that just looked amazing right away, rather than my other stuff which was like, yeah, you know. So you build it up, you know, in a much quicker time. I've got friends who go into features. They work 2 or 3 years on Happy Feet or whatever. They'd have a bunch of snow in the background, and that's all they did. And you know, whereas in commercials, I might have 40 commercials in 2 years, and you know, it shows so much more stuff. Plus, you get put in stressful situations, everything else, you grow so much quicker. So I think it's very, very valuable. At the same time, like talking about features, like I had a chance when I left commercials, I was going to go work in feature film. I had a chance to be lead on Happy Feet for effects, and I was going to do that. Last minute, I decided to move to LA to be lead on this other thing. I ended up working in film and doing all this other stuff. For me, that was really fascinating because I remember I was with a buddy of mine, this German artist, really amazing guy. He was a supervisor at Sony, and it was during the Oscars. We were sitting down 3 years after I had moved to the US, and we were watching, I had Superman Returns up for an Oscar. It was competing with Pirates of the Caribbean 2 with Davy Jones, so I was screwed. There was no way I was going to win, but it was cool to actually, you know, be able to watch it. But he was up for Monster House, which was up against Happy Feet. Happy Feet won, and I had this moment where I thought, over the last 3 years, did I make the right decision? I could have worked on Happy Feet for 3 years, is what it took, and I could have, you know, worked on a project which won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects or Best CG. Or I could go and have done like Blade, I worked on Last Samurai, I worked on Superman Returns, traveled all over the world, did all this great stuff. So I could have done all this, or I could have worked on one big project and had a bunch of freaking penguins like stamping around in the snow. So I decided I made the right decision, and it was kind of like commercials. You know, the more diversity you get, the more experience you get, and the more you get the network. And I think this is all about building relationships. The more, you know, you write those letters saying, I'm not looking for a job, but if I was, you know, please consider me. You're putting feelers out there for everyone to say, okay, I would love to hire this person. Maybe not right now, but maybe down the line. And the more people you work with, the more your reputation is going to build, the more you're going to get to meet other people and see what they're doing. It's just such a crucial thing to get out there as much as you can. Now, there is so much more I wanted to get into, but it seems like it would be a day event, it seems. But, you know, for the most part, I think that it's very important. I will say that there is certain things like when you apply for work, I heard this a lot the past 2 days, like people say, well, everywhere says like industry experience required. And that's something that I think you really got to be in it to win it. I keep saying that a lot, but it's basically, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to apply, like, you know, get out there, do stuff. Don't ever let stuff like push you back or think, I'm not ready yet. Like when I first cut my first good reel that I was happy with, I sent it to Blizzard and I sent it to Blur Studio in the States. And that was more as a joke. I wasn't really serious. Blizzard sent me a rejection card 6 months later. We've got you on file. And I was like, cool. But Blur, Tim Miller, the owner of Blur, emailed me. And he's like, hey, we really love your stuff. We want you to work for us. And I was like, dude, I'm 16 years old. Like, I can't get over there. But that was it. Like, I did it. I put myself out there. I figured, what the heck, let's do it. And you never know when that's going to happen. Now, before Patrice runs up and throws me off, I'll quickly say that, you know, I think it's really vital to do that, to just go out there and try. And even then, after I didn't take the job at Blur, what I did do is I kept emailing him every 3 or 4 months. I just cut a new reel or did a new thing. And I kept that relationship going. I kept that momentum going. And it meant that if you were to keep in contact with these people, it means when they're finally ready to hire you, there is no job interview, there is no other stuff. They know you at that point. So you've kind of managed to bypass ever needing to validate or qualify yourself just by building that relationship. You know, it's kind of like going to lunch with people all the time. The more time you get FaceTime with them, the more they get to know you, the more that they're your friend. And you know, if they're trying to hire a stranger or they're trying to hire you, guess who's going to get the job? Okay, so I think it's worthwhile keeping those relationships going. Now, if you were to do that to Tim Miller at Blur times 1,000, like every studio, and you kept that going, again, sounds like a lot of work, but build a spreadsheet and just keep firing emails every 6 months or 3 months just to keep refreshes with everyone going. That's going to be really important. You kind of build and keep those relationships, plant those seeds. Finally, you know, going back to the whole work experience thing, during Lord of the Rings, Weta, when they first started, they would say like 5 years minimum feature film experience required to work on Lord of the Rings. So most people, including myself, were like, oh, you know, I need to have 4 years, or I need to have this, or other people are like, I don't have any. And you got to understand that just because someone says, you know, you have to have all this stuff, it doesn't mean that you need to meet this requirement. What they're doing is they're filtering out who is ready and who isn't. If you say, man, I wanted to apply at Weta, but I don't have enough experience, that's the kind of people they're filtering away, because they're saying, okay, you're not ready because you think you're not ready. One of my friends, Dave Clayton, he had 1 year feature film experience, but he applied. Weta, you know, they weren't going to say, oh, you need to come back in 4 years. They hired him. He came in as more of like a mid-level animator. A couple of weeks went by. In his spare time on Two Towers, he started animating Gollum just to show off what he could do. They loved it so much, they started letting him animate the cave trolls as well as Gollum, and he got like a bunch of key shots on Two Towers. Return of the King, the third one, he was one of the main animators doing all the Gollum stuff. By King Kong, he was animation supervisor. By Avatar, you know, everything. He's now the animation director, the guy that, like, during the Oscars and VES awards, he would be flying around representing Weta to, you know, all over the world. So I would catch up with him whenever he came to LA to get beaten by Life of Pi every single time. But, you know, this guy could have said, okay, you know, 1 year experience, I better wait a few years. He didn't. He threw his stuff in there. When he got there, he's like, okay, I'm not going to wait and let people give me work. I'm going to show off what I can do and work my way up. And it took no time at all for him to be supervising and then to be running the animation department. And he's, you know, one of the key guys there now. And that's just it. You need to take your career into your hands and you need to take charge. And you got to get out there, get out of your comfort zone, because no one else is going to, you know, push you as much as you can push yourself. So, you know, you got to be able to win it. You got to make it your career, and you know, you got to keep kind of raising the bar all the time, and don't kind of settle, but keep pushing forward. Like I said, I could go on forever, but you know, I'll save it for a long email or something. But if you guys have any questions, let's kind of rattle through them real quick. I'm going to shoot Patrice. Sorry.
You're saying that if you go to someone and say, I'm doing 3D, makes no sense. You have to present yourself, tell what you do, I'm Holland, I can fucking blow up any city. But when you're applying as a generalist, how would you explain that you could do a bit of everything?
Mm-hmm. That was one of the many areas I wanted to elaborate on more. But I always say specialize, and people are going to say, well, what if I'm a lighting artist and an effects artist? Do I say both, or what do I do? And I'll answer that part first and just say that it's better to own one thing, because if you say I'm a generalist or I am a lighting artist or whatever else, it means most people don't know how to place you, and you need that one thing people are going to think of you when they think of that subject. So it's better to say, as a generalist, you might say, okay, my lighting skills are better, or my modeling is better. It's better to own one thing and say, my modeling skills are, I'm really great at modeling. However, I also do a lot of other generalist tasks, such as lighting, animation, other things as well. So that way they're like, okay, the lighting guy, but this generalist work, can we give you that right now? You're not avoiding other work by saying, I'm this guy or this girl. You're actually able to define yourself, but say, I also do these other areas. And they're going to see that on your reel and everything else too. So you can use the keyword generalist in what you're doing, but it's still better to own one thing. So when you're starting out, to say, hey, I really love effects, but I'm early in my career and I've made sure my skills are up in all the other areas. So I'm very good at modeling, lighting, animation. That way they're like, okay, great. And we don't have any effects right now, but we'll keep that in mind, down the line if we do. However, let's bring you on for this other task. Right now we only have camera tracking. Can you do it? You're not disqualifying yourself from it. But it does mean that I think it's very important to be clear about what you want. Like, people aren't, like, once you do get in as well, people are not psychic. So if you're kind of annoyed because someone got promoted to a job that you wanted, and you're like, damn, that person, like, why the hell didn't they come to me? If you never communicate, like, hey, this is what I want to do, then they're never going to think of you when that comes up. So I think it's also, this is on a tangent, but it's very important to communicate what your goals are to people. So you say, like, ultimately, I would love to get into animating creatures or whatever. That way, if a creature job comes up, they might say, hey, you're not ready yet, but how about we pair you up with our senior animator, and that way you can learn a bit more about this and get some experience. People, if you make that mental connection with them, whether it is like, oh, I'll get them to do this thing, or about like, associating you with one item, that way they'll think of you as the real flow person or the lighting person. So I know it's a bit broad, but essentially, you want to say, I'm really good at this one thing, because that way you're selling that, I'm really great at lighting, but I also model, I also animate, I also do all the other general stuff, and I'm happy to do whatever it takes to get my foot in the door. So hopefully that helps. Sorry.
If I want to apply to an epic studio, but I'm afraid to get rejected, is it better if I apply as an intern, just to play it safe?
I don't know too many places that do internships. It depends. Like, some countries, some cities have programs, which is essentially the government is saying we'll pay for that. It can't hurt. I've also seen people who came in initially as an intern and got bumped up to regular artists right away. I do think that don't be afraid of rejection. I know people who went to ILM, and when they got rejected 6 times, they came in and they had their reel from 10 years ago still at ILM. It's a chance for them to see your work and say, you know what, 6 months ago or 2 years ago you weren't ready, but since then your work's gone drastically better, and they can compare the work from previously to now and say, wow, like, we can see in 6 months what you can do, so we know that we can hire you, rather than I'm going to hold off and wait till 4 more years till I'm ready to go to Weta. So whereas like going as an intern, I would try and avoid it wherever you can, but you could always do a follow-up and say, apply. If they reject you, say, hey, I'm still interested in, if there's an internship or any other opportunities, I'm willing to start from the bottom. I will do a quick tangent for 1 second. I'll just give a quick example where I had 2 friends, both were trying to get their foot in the door in the industry, and this is where I do think that you're right. Like, it is good to get in wherever you can and work your way up. I had a friend, Kate. She started as like a client service girl, where she'd get coffees for the client and run around and do stuff. Whereas I had a friend, Rob. Rob was like, I refused to work anywhere but Weta or ILM. And this is like a guy starting his career. So naturally he got job offers, turned everyone down, never progressed. Kate wanted to be a compositor. So let's fast forward 5 years. Kate went from being a client service to a junior compositor, mid-level senior, then flying all over the world, working in Montreal, working in London, working all these different places. Rob was still like ILM or broke, you know? So it's better to pick stuff like, start at the bottom, work your way out, get in the trenches. Don't think that you're too good for anything. I think don't ever work for free, and that's another different subject, but because you need to respect yourself, but take whatever you can get and put in the hard work, and later on reap the benefits. So yeah, any other questions?
Yes, I'm now a student in 3D and VFX, and my teacher said that in this kind of job, it takes really a great time in our lives. And I was wondering, with all your experience, how did you manage your private and professional life right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I always say you want to work to live, not live to work, because a lot of people, like I've seen relationships, divorces, everything happen, and like Superman Returns, there was like a big poll on this forum about whether or not the movie's worth it, because everyone in the industry was like losing their lives, their health, everything, and I think that you need to draw the line, and only you can do that, because you know we are in a point where this industry where things are done for cheap a lot of the time, which means that artists are usually the ones who work twice as hard for half the money. And this industry is great, but I think that you need to be able to put your foot down and know what is right and what's wrong. So I also think that with experience you can work faster. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about with being more focused on not wasting time. Like when I go to work, I'm at work. I will chat to people after work because I want to get the hell out. And it's not about me saying I hate my job. It's about I don't want to be there at midnight and I don't need to be there at midnight. It's going to happen occasionally, but I think it's good to balance it. Go to that link. I'll try and bring it back up, but I do cover a lot of stuff about that. I will send out information about it. But for me, like I might do stuff like if I'm going to work overtime, I might do it in the morning. I'll come in at 6 a.m. and I'll work till 7 p.m. So everyone else is working till midnight. I'm going home when I can put my feet up and watch TV, or I can go out with people I care about. I can do stuff like normal people rather than like, sorry, I got to work all night long. Whereas like no one else is awake at 6 in the morning. So if anything, it means no one's at work too. So I get the render farm and everything else. I can put my feet up. But it's about being careful about your own time, being conscious about what's important to you. Otherwise, like your health, the people you care about in your life, everything can all go away. So yeah, just do what you feel is right for you, and don't throw yourself under the bus for your employer, because I hate to say it, but it is a business, and they're not going to say, you know what, we're going to pay you for an extra 5 weeks when we don't have work. They're going to have to do right by them. So you got to do right by you. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's about the contact info. You said share all your contact info at the end of your reel, but I also saw you put your reel on Vimeo, like accessible to everybody. So technically your phone number is available to some random dude on the internet who could just call you up and, hey dude, how are you?
Don't put ideas out there.
So are you more
I've
selective with the information you share and where you share it?
That's a really good point, and I've thought about this a lot, because I do get people, like, my phone will ring, I'll answer it, and people are like, I just want to see if you'd answer the phone. It's like, okay, cool. Or worse, they're like, hey, how's it going? I've got like a effects question. It's like, dude, it's 2 in the morning, are you kidding? You're right, like, it is good to be selective with information. I guess it's up to you. Like, I always think that it's a business and it's not like, but you're right, like you don't want to advertise this stuff too much, but when you're sending an email out, you can put in the email your phone number, all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily need to be on your reel if you didn't want. But I do think putting your city, other stuff like that, because there are so many times when I've wanted to hire someone, I didn't realize like they live in the next city when I thought they were like on the other side of the country. And if I'd known that, I would have called them up in 5 minutes before. But you can be selective with information, but I would still find a way, like if I'm writing an email to someone saying here's my stuff, I might put like my phone number and all that information there, but maybe not on Vimeo, so that way it's got a link and an email, so you're filtering that from general use, but the person you're reaching out to has all the information they need to reach out to you. So, cool. Any other questions?
Yep.
Hi. Cool.
When you moved from Australia to California, was it hard to get a visa? I'm personally looking forward to move there.
Yep.
Just trying to get a job before moving, of course.
Yep.
But I heard it's really hard to get a visa and a work permit today. So how was it 20 years or 15 years ago when you started?
It was harder back then because immigration, like I was reading a Forbes article where they were talking about the US immigration is like probably one of the worst in the world. It is so backwards. Switzerland seems to be the best. They'll actually pay you sometimes to move to their country because you get the best artists, the best doctors in the world. The economy is going to go up. It's going to benefit them. But back then, like for every year of your degree you didn't have, you needed 4 years experience. So technically you needed 16 years work experience to go work in the US. And whereas like a degree doesn't really necessarily count for anything, it's just completely backwards. That was a big discussion I had with Tim Miller when I was 16 and we were talking about that stuff. But it's gotten better, it's gotten faster, there's been a lot more visas. The US is definitely starting to pick up. It's one of those things like, I've got a friend of mine, she just moved to the US. She's from Italy, but she went to Australia, lived there, got a citizenship, and then from there, she decided to move to the US, so she used her Australian visa because they had a special E3 visa for Australians. So becoming an Aussie became easier. Same thing, I got a friend from New Zealand. New Zealanders can become Australians very easily, and vice versa. But why would you want to become a New Zealander? Kidding. But so he wanted to go work in the States, so he became an Australian because then he could go to the US a lot easier. So you got to be strategic. I had like a lot of people ask me this over the last couple of days. I'll keep this really short, but otherwise Patrice will kill me. But basically, be strategic. Like if maybe you can't get a visa right away, and I've seen a few people kind of blame the companies, like, oh yeah, they only hire senior people. It's not about that. It's actually about you need to convince the government that you can take a job in their country because they're essentially going to be giving up a job that one of their citizens could have. So you're stealing work away. So it's kind of like looked at it very negatively. You've got to prove that that no one else in the world or in that country could do what you are doing. So when you're applying, it's more about building a case that they can present to the government and they make the decision about whether or not you can get it. It's not up to the company. And I've seen people apply and want to employ someone, but the government wouldn't let them. So sometimes you got to be like, okay, I want to work at ILM. Great, I'm going to go to London and work for 3 years at MPC to get my experience up enough that when I go apply in the US, I will qualify in their eyes. At the same time, you look at visas and you start to think strategically about that. Maybe you do want to work at ILM. The easiest thing to do for you guys would be go to London because ILM London just opened up. Or go to Singapore and you work there, and then they might be able to work out a way to get you over. Because like working for one company, working in a different location is very easy. So you start to get strategic, and again, so much stuff I want to do. God damn it. But there's all that stuff about that, like being strategic with what you're doing and thinking outside the box, trying to find ways to kind of make it all work for you in the best benefit it can be. So yeah. Any more questions? Yep. You? Oh.
Do you often use telework? Work over Skype, over the world to other countries as see with the...
Okay, so do I work remotely for other companies or countries? Yeah, all the time. I live in LA, but most of the time, even in LA, I work for myself. Not everyone can do that, but I'm happy to kind of show you guys a few ways you can do that. Like I mentioned, there's a guy at Weta, he wants to go work from home, so I've been working with him on how he can kind of break away and get clients and get work that way. These days, that's where it's all going. There's a company called Scarecrow VFX. They're trying to become 100% virtual studio. They're based in LA. They hire a lot of people in Northern California, Southern California, but ultimately they want to get people worldwide. And I always joke with Blur Studio because we wanted to hire a lot of people, and most of them are in France and Germany. So, it seems like Germany has a lot of really good, talented lighting artists and effects artists. France has a lot of great effects artists and animators. So I'm like, you should start Blur France and Blur Germany just to go where the talent is. But ultimately with today's technology, you can work from anywhere. I think there's certain jobs that maybe is not as easy, like lighting. Usually, you need all the assets local. You need to have feedback from people around you. But modeling, stuff like that, I have no problem to hire someone anywhere in the world. In fact, I've got people working for me right now in different locations doing modeling, because that's something I can give them feedback. It's not crucial. It's not waiting for animation updates or hair simulations. So it really depends, but it's totally doable. It's just a matter of finding the right people and giving them confidence in you to be able to give you that work. So saying, I got a render farm, I got this, that's going to make me feel like, okay, great, you can do the work, rather than I'm going to sit in my pajamas on my laptop and try and do what you guys are doing at a big studio. So anyway, done, please. But like I said, shoot me an email. I don't have my email address up, but let me go back a few. Oops, I hit stop. Crap. Basically, go to my website. It's around here somewhere. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. And I'd be happy to talk with you guys more, help you guys if you ever want to learn more about this stuff. So thanks again, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, it was more a chance to put together some condensed content, and I wish I had covered more. It was more of a time factor, but I had so many notes, and maybe there's a chance for me to do that again this year. There's lots that's going on in the Paris event, so if you want to sign up, check out the show notes at www.alanmckay.com/50. And there'll be a link in there to sign up. And I'm sure registration is going to fill up pretty quick, so get in there. And like I said, this would be a chance for us to hang out. Last year was a blast. It definitely left a lot of nasty hangovers and a lot of partying. And that's pretty much it for this episode. Like I said, next episode is going to be a really cool one for you as creatives to learn about how to automate your workflow and how to work more efficiently. When I learned how to code and do a lot of stuff, it didn't mean that I need to be writing crazy math or doing anything like that at all. It's more about just the process, understanding, hey, you know what, I'm doing this one task every day, all day, or, a big portion of it. So what if I made that into a tool where I could just put in like 3 values I need, hit a button, it goes away and does it all for me, and I can get on with focusing on the bits that, for me, I really enjoy. And so my whole philosophy on automation and scripting and things like that is basically that when I sit down at a computer or whatever, then I basically want to be doing the bit of work that requires me to be there. I don't want to be doing all the mundane stuff that isn't really necessary. And all of that is doable through automation. And just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that you need to be a crazy math person or anything like that at all. And I want to kind of really squash those beliefs. And in addition to that, there are going to be lots of really cool episodes coming up. I want to hit you guys hard in December. I want to really get you ready for next year, okay? So what I'd love to hear from you about now is if you go in and write your comments or send me an email, whatever you want to do, I'd love to hear from you, and I promise I will reply to anything that you shoot me this month, because I really want to engage with you guys, and I want to make sure I'm there to help any way I can. So usually I try my best to reply, or at least I definitely read everyone's comments and emails. This month I'm going to try and make that promise that I will at least respond in some shape and form. That's it for now. I'm going to leave it there. Finally, if you want to get on the insiders list, like I mentioned before, alanmckay.com/inside. And I believe my Twitter handle, I should know this stuff, is at AlanFTMckay, so ALLANFTMCKAY. Again, all that stuff will be in the show notes, but that will link to my Periscope. And again, that's another way that I'll be able to interact with you guys. Next episode, I'm also going to put out information about the Real Review, the Career Intensive. Both of those I think are really worthwhile. It doesn't matter if you're starting out or you're a senior in design or in 3D or compositing, whatever you're into. I think it'll be really beneficial. Even if you're not in this industry that we're all in, I think all of this transfers over very consistently. In addition to that, I will have other information such as the industry drinks. There's going to be lots, okay? So this is your month. I'm going to be here. I'm going to try and get as much content and as much ways I can to help you guys. So that's it. I look forward to hearing from you. Shoot me a message or write a comment. Tell me your goals. I'd love to hear them.